All right, hey everybody. Today we're going to talk about Johnson inheriting Vietnam, the Vietnam problem. So we need to talk about what did the Gulf of Tonkin resolution give the president? Identify Operation Rolling Thunder and identify Agent Orange. Okay? So we're going to start with Johnson inheriting Vietnam. It says South Vietnam was basically in a mess. By 1964, 7 different governments had ruled it. So power actually had changed hands 3 times in one single month. That tells you that it was complete chaos in South Vietnam. There was very little form of government. It was just chaos. One leader to another group of leaders, which meant that the entire country was not only in a political mess, but an economic one as well. So we're seeing that happen. It says Johnson had confidence on domestic issues for sure. You know his Great Society, Head Start, Medicare, Medicaid, immigration. Those were his things that he was very comfortable with. Foreign policy was newer to him, and so he relied heavily on Kennedy's cabinet as he, stepped into office upon Kennedy's death, including using Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. Make sure you know Robert McNamara because he makes a lot of decisions in the Vietnam War because he was Secretary of Defense. So it says Johnson sent in 7,000 more military advisors and an additional $50 million in aid. So we're sending that much money into Vietnam, $50 million. You start to see, and remember this is 64, okay? You start to see the Great Society that LBJ so cherished kind of dwindle here because you cannot funnel that much money into another country and then eventually ourselves into a war and be able to keep up domestically with those kind of programs and keep them funded. It says Johnson kept insisting it was still up to the Vietnamese to win. So we have not gone over there yet. With boots on the ground fighting, he's still saying it's the Vietnamese problem. We will help them with money. We will help them with supplies. We will help them as far as sending in military advisors to give advice. But he expanded the U.S. support for covert operations, which were amphibious raids on the north. So he does expand us into some covert activity, which basically means this wasn't being told to the public, but we were getting involved in secret transactions, if you will, over there in North Vietnam by us trying to stop the march of the North Vietnamese. Then you have the Gulf of Tonkin. And I want to tell you that this is a very hot topic for people who became later anti-war. I used to teach with a gentleman who knew a lot more American history than I do. And when you would talk about LBJ, he would get fired up because he really thought Johnson made up what is a result of Gulf of Tonkin and drug us into a war illegally. So what is Gulf of Tonkin? So allegedly, it says the North Vietnamese gunboats had fired on U.S. warships in the Gulf of Tonkin. It's literally a gulf, a body of water, okay? So they had fired, allegedly, North Vietnamese gunboats fired on us there in the Gulf of Tonkin. All right, so I'm going to show you a picture of that area here, Gulf of Tonkin, so you'll know where it is. There's Hanoi, which was the capital, and later of the North Vietnamese. But anyway, right now it's just all Vietnam. Here is Vietnam. Okay, it stretches from up here. This little section, you see it gets smaller down here to Ho Chi Minh City. All of this is Vietnam. Here's Laos, which obviously is on the border of Vietnam. And here is Cambodia. Okay, this is the South China Sea, and it's called South China Sea because here is China. All right, this is the southern, southeastern portion of China. here is the Gulf of Tonkin. So it's literally a gulf, a body of water called the Gulf of Tonkin. And it is in this area that this event allegedly occurred. Okay, so allegedly the North Vietnamese fire on our ships that are in the Gulf of Tonkin. Johnson persuades U.S. Congress that this is an aggressive act and we should respond militarily. Okay, that we are being attacked by the North Vietnamese in the Gulf of Tonkin and we should attack back. On August 7th of 64, Congress voted to approve the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, which also said the president, as commander-in-chief, gets a blank check to take all necessary measures to protect U.S. interests in Vietnam. Blank check. So that means that the president now can do whatever and say, I am taking all necessary measures because of these difficult times, and I'm going to protect the United States. And so it gives him the power to literally do whatever as commander-in-chief if he feels like we are under pressure, under attack. All necessary measures. Remember that. So blank check means literally he could do whatever he wanted. Critics argue that this is an illegal war because it was not officially declared by Congress. We don't have a vote of war passed by Congress. And basically Congress has handed the president all the war power. And also it says only this resolution was approved. The resolution was approved, but not a vote of war by Congress. And it also says here, Gulf of Tonkin will be the beginning of Johnson's political downfall. Now, show you a couple of things. First is what really happened in the Gulf of Tonkin that night. And this is, obviously this is top secret. These are unclassified documents. It says 2 startling findings emerged from the research. First, it is not simply that there is a different story as to what happened. It's that no attack on us happened that night. And it goes into there was analytic errors and unwillingness to consider contrary evidence. The NSA headquarters reported Hanoi's plans, North Vietnam, to attack the 2 ships on patrol, the 2 American ships. Further analytic errors and an obscuring of other information, which kind of looks like a cover-up, led to publication of more, quote, evidence that they were attacking us. In truth, North Vietnam, Hanoi's Navy, was engaged in nothing that night but the salvage of 2 of the boats damaged on 2 August. So basically, they had 2 boats that had been damaged on the 2nd of August. This is by August 7th. We see that they've been out there on the 2nd of August. They were actually shooting flares in the air at night to see where their ships had wrecked, and they were trying to salvage the shipwreck. Flares. Okay, so then this intelligence group, NSA and the United States military, give Johnson the information that the United States is under attack because of flares. Not at us. Okay. Instead of going into greater detail and Johnson demanding evidence, hardcore evidence of this, he jumps on this bandwagon, and now we have where he can do whatever he wants to do in war. Okay. In his defense against those like my colleague, I don't personally think Johnson wanted a huge war because he wants great society. War kills great society. War takes money and effort and lives, and all of that is needed to promote his great society. However, I will say that I think he was certainly derelict in investigating this information. And a later war will harken back to this. Anyway, Johnson's dilemma. How could he stop the fall of a pro-Western, but very unpopular, as you know, government in South Vietnam without making this into an American war? One that's definitely going to cut funding for his great society. So now we have this Gulf of Tonkin resolution that says the president can do whatever. We have this resolution to go after the North Vietnamese. So full-scale American involvement will begin in 1965. The president's advisors encouraged the bombing of the North, Hanoi. I showed you that on the map. It says after the Viet Cong attack a U.S. base at Pleiku in 1965. So the Viet Cong remember the Viet Cong have solidified with the North Vietnamese and they're attacking us. And the Viet Cong are made up of a lot of southern Vietnamese, so they know the area. They're going to attack us. Johnson will authorize Operation Rolling Thunder, which is a prolonged air attack using B-52s against northern targets. I wanted to show you a picture of Operation Rolling Thunder. This is what I always think of when I say it. So just a few bombs being dropped here. This is massive. Okay, it's not the mother of all bombs, but it's pretty close to the destruction it brings with just boom, 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 all these bombs being dropped repeatedly on an area. All right, so then we have Secretary of Defense McNamara recommending sending in 100,000 combat troops into Vietnam, which more than doubles our number of forces there. He thought even more troops might be needed in addition to the 100,000. And he stressed, at worst, we may have 500 deaths a month. 500 Americans die. Ladies and gentlemen, let's understand that by 1968, battle deaths, American losses peak at more than 500 a week. 68 is the same year that Chatham Central High School graduate Kenneth Scott is killed. He is part of this 500 a week. By 1968, there were 536,100 U.S. troops fighting in Vietnam. Massive numbers of people. Massive numbers that were being killed. Under General William Westmoreland, the U.S. troops were going on search and destroy missions to find enemy troops, bomb their positions, force them out into the open. Remember, all this is jungle, very tropical, rainforest-like, heat, humidity, rain, very wet, very damp, lots of issues, disease, other things I have to deal with. They're trying to force these Viet Cong and North Vietnamese out into the open, search and destroy. Picture of that, which will show you what I'm talking about. This will search and destroy. Okay? You are nasty, hot, sweaty, and walking in, bodies of water to your knees, to your waist. You don't know what's in it. They're having to go out, move out, search an area, and try to destroy what's there. Very difficult to do with this jungle-y type climate. Okay, it says here the Viet Cong will easily hide in the thick jungle. They also tunneled a lot underground, a lot of tunneling. And of course, since they know the lay of the land, they do that very easily. Often dug by hand, too, by the way. U.S. forces are going to destroy vegetation with napalm, which was a gelid gasoline that explodes on contact, and Agent Orange, which was a chemical that would strip leaves from the trees. Pictures of that. Here is a survivor of Agent Orange. It would literally burn the skin, put all kinds of toxins in the body. Really bad. My dad knew someone who he watched repeatedly mix Agent Orange to spray on vegetation. This man would mix it with his hands, bare hands, and he later in life suffered a complete nervous breakdown, this man, and would shake uncontrollably and did not have Parkinson's. My dad always believed it was from the Agent Orange. So this chemical is very deadly. It strips all the leaves. This becomes a major issue for them, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And how do we defend against this trail with supply lines going from the north down to the south? It also wrapped through Cambodia and Laos, which meant that was harder for us to bomb because they're not in Vietnam. Are we going to drag them into the war also? So supplies were going that way. Here is a picture of the effects of Agent Orange on the vegetation. I wonder if you can see this little kid here. And also, please go back and read Is Johnson to Blame?